Hi everyone. Okay, I am so excited because we're doing our Goddess Live series with Alex Nashton. She is the goddess of mindfulness and potential, and I'm going to call her in. Okay. Yay. Yes. Give me 1 second here. Here she is. Alex, send request. Oh, hi, Chantel. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi, Jamie. I'm doing really well right now. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm so excited to talk to you. Thank you for coming on.
Oh my God, it's such a joy for me. I love nothing more than having really nerdy conversations with other empowering women. So it's such a joy for me to be on here with you. Thank you so much for asking me to come on.
Yes, and I was just watching all of yours. I was geeking out on all of your IG lives too. They're so good.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I love all the women that you have on and what the subjects you guys talk about. So let's dive in. I'm excited.
Okay,
Okay,
awesome.
so this is the Goddess series, and I love to feature women, like you said, doing powerful and amazing work. And I've coined you the goddess of mindfulness and potential.
I love it.
Yes, and so what I'm going to do is I would love for you to just kind of introduce yourself and let everybody know what you do, because you do so many amazing things, and I do so much. So if you share that with us, and then I'll dive into God's messages, and we can just talk a
Oh,
little
I think I might be losing you a little bit, Jamie. You just cut out for a second.
bit. Can you hear me?
It's a little like pixelated and robot-y, and your sentences are very fragmented at the moment.
It's better.
Ah, I can hear you better now. Okay, here we go.
Okay, I
Now
turned
you're
my
back.
Wi-Fi off. Okay, I feel like there's so much energy on these that I always get bad connection, but only when I do these with these amazing people.
I know. I have the same experience, honestly. It happens for me too.
Okay, so what I was saying is I would love for you to tell us about what you do, and then we'll dive into your goddess messages.
Amazing. So, hello everyone. If I don't already know you, my name is Alex Nashton, and I am a mindfulness and neuroscience based mental health coach. I also am a facilitator of breathwork, meditation, and nidra practices. And so much of my practice and so much of my own teaching and the way in which I coach people is informed by an understanding of neuroscience and neuroplasticity. In addition to all of the really fun and enjoyable work that I'm doing right now, I'm also a full-time student at UCLA where I'm studying neuroscience. So I am super inspired by how we can maximize the potential of a constantly changing brain, because we know that our brains, we know that our nervous systems are changing all the time, like every single minute of every single day, whether we are conscious of it or unconscious of it, we are experiencing changes within our nervous system. So one of my biggest goals as a coach and as a teacher is to help you harness that change that's already happening and take it in a direction that is really useful for you and aligned with your dreams, goals, aspirations, the nervous system state that you ultimately want to be in. Yeah, so that's like the quick and dirty on who I am and what I do.
And that's so deep and involved, and I love it so much because I really focus on similar things, but like the gut brain body connection, and it's all about how can you put yourself in that state of calm and connect instead of fight or flight. And it's like I don't think most people
Mm-hmm.
really get that deep connection, that stress is everything. It's the only thing that matters is how to
Mm-hmm.
react, like how to put ourselves in a state of reacting to stress in a better way. And so I feel like that's where you come in, is really teaching us how to do that. It's so amazing.
Yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
think that nervous system malleability and nervous system self-mastery is really a key component of what I do, because we all know that it's not good to be stressed out all the time. Like, we know that that's not a beneficial state to be in,
Mm-hmm.
but I find that so many of us don't have the appropriate or adequate tools to shift ourselves into a parasympathetic state when we spend all day long on these like really high levels, sympathetic nervous system activation states. And I also find that many of us, because of the world that we live in and the society that we live in, we have this very dualistic understanding of these two distinct branches of the autonomic nervous system, where we commonly hear the sympathetic nervous system referred to as the fight or flight stress response, and the parasympathetic nervous system known as the rest and digest relaxation response. And when you hear those two things side by side, one sounds amazing and one sounds absolutely awful. Like, why would you ever want to be in a fight or flight stress response unless there was like a tiger jumping out at you and it was actually useful? So I think where we get into a little bit of trouble is in this very dualistic, like binary thinking when it comes to the nervous system. And what I hear other people sharing so much or talking about so much is like just turning on or turning off the sympathetic nervous system, where when really, like, if we look at the sympathetic nervous system, it doesn't work like a light switch that we just flip on or flip off. It works more like a dimmer switch. So if that dimmer switch was like on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like there's a tiger in the room with you and you need to like puff up your chest and fight it or run away as quickly as possible, like that's a time when you would want it to be all the way up on full blast. But in order to be engaged with our external environment, in order to learn anything new, in order to really truly participate in our external world, we need to be in at least a little bit of a sympathetic nervous system state. But on that dimmer switch scale, it's more of like a 1, a 2, or a 3. Where I think we get into a lot of trouble is when we spend all day, every day at like a 7, 8, 9, making up imaginary tigers where they don't actually exist. So I think a huge part of the work that I do is understanding nervous system mastery and malleability. So understanding like how do we dial it down when it doesn't need to be up on full blast, and when do we want to be in that subtle sympathetic nervous system activation, and when do we want to just be totally in parasympathetic. I think it's so important that we have the appropriate tools in our tool belt to make that transition when it best serves us, because it's not healthy to be in parasympathetic all the time. Like, we are designed to fluctuate back and forth between the two. But it really is, what it really comes down to is becoming a master of your nervous system rather than a victim of it, rather than just having it take you on this wild ride all the time.
Yes. And for people to understand too that, like, kind of what you're saying, that stress and perceived stress, like, I think when I talk to clients and I'm like, okay, we need to lower your stress, they're like, well, I'm not stressed out. And I'm like, well, your body is perceiving stress in some way, whether it's external, internal. And obviously I'm dealing with them with a lot of times they don't even realize their body's in a state of stress and inflammation because of other things that are going on inside their gut. And that, you know, it's like they don't connect that. And so it's trying to make awareness around that. But one of the things in your messages that I love that I think is relevant to what you're talking about, that was like, it just hit so good home with me, was when you were talking about, I'm going to read it, but when you were talking about, you know, the science of neuroplasticity and how we need to take responsibility and for what we're putting into, I mean, it's how I took the message, and what we're putting into our brain and what we're choosing, like what we're absorbing. And I talk about that a lot too. It's like the gut brain connection. It's like what you put in your belly and what you put in your brain both matter. And then how you digest it and what you choose to absorb both matter. And so I loved how you spoke into that with your message. And if you could just speak a little deeper about taking responsibility and how to own and master your nervous system.
Absolutely. So I'll start just by explaining a little bit more about neuroplasticity, which, for those of you that haven't heard this word, it's quite a bit of like a buzzword now in the modern holistic health and wellness community. So it's gaining momentum. It's becoming more and more popular. But if you haven't heard it before, neuroplasticity is essentially your brain's ability to rewire itself. So I think the old model of neuroscience used to believe that our brains were just like these hardwired things that were always going to be the same way as we are, like whenever we like arrive, quote unquote, into adulthood, and then it's just like, that's it, we're fixed, like change is not possible, which is such a depressing way to perceive our nervous system and our minds. So what the newest or the latest model of neuroscience is supporting is this concept of neuroplasticity, meaning your brain's ability to rewire itself. And your brain is doing this all the time, like every single minute of every single day. I think I said this before, whether you are unconscious of it or conscious of it, every book that you read, every movie that you watch, every inspiring Instagram live conversation that you listen to, or like post that you read on Instagram, every time you go for a walk in nature, or call your best friend on the phone, like all of that is changing the circuitry of your brain. It's either reinforcing a neural pathway that already exists, or it's forging a new one, or it's creating a new one. Now, I think where this gets really important is that it's not just the stimulation in our external environment that is shaping this circuitry within our brain, but it's also every single thing we subject ourselves to within our internal environment. So every thought that we think, every emotion that we experience, every time we project our minds into memories of the past, or project our minds into like anticipations or dreams or fantasies or like dread of the future, that's also changing the neural circuitry of our brain. And so I think where this gets really important is that when we understand awareness, right, when we can become aware of our thought patterns, we have the ability to say like, hold on, I'm going to pump the brakes here for a second. I really don't like this mental rabbit hole that I'm going down. I really don't like ruminating over this thing that happened 5 years ago that still causes me to feel so much stress and so much pain. I'm going to stop. I'm going to come back to present moment awareness, or maybe even direct my attention to something that's more positive, or at the very least useful in helping me travel down the trajectory that I truly do want to be going down. And where I think that this is really intricately connected to the work that you do, Jamie, with gut-brain axis, is that I think people think of like the brain, the nervous system, as this thing that is like very separated and very isolated from the rest of the body, when it's all so interconnected. Like your nervous system connects to every single part of your body, from every organ to like every little hair follicle that's like on your arms. Like that's why our hair stands up like whenever we're scared or frightened, or we get like goosebumps. Like every single little part of us is connected to and influenced by our nervous system. And I think where we can either get into trouble, or where we can get really excited about this relationship between nervous system and the rest of our body, is when we understand that especially within the gastrointestinal tract, most of our neuropeptides, meaning most of our molecules of emotion, are created within the gastrointestinal tract. Like our emotions do come a little bit from our brain, like the molecules of emotion that we experience do come a little bit from the brain, but they also come from like the heart, from the organ of the lungs, from the organ of the small intestine and the stomach. Like all of these different parts of our digestive tract are influenced by stress, but they also, in that relationship to stress, send signals from the body, so like from these organs back to the brain, that either like reinforce and perpetuate that cycle, or say like, no, actually we are safe, let's turn this ship around. Yeah. So I think that is it's so important. It's so important that we can acknowledge the relationship between the two, and be able to use either lifestyle changes or dietary changes to influence one or the other, because they're always in relationship and they're always changing each other, whether we are aware of it or not.
Yeah, it's so wild.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the same, that's kind of what I mean by like what you put in and how you digest it, because like the same thing of being connected, you know, like if you are not eating the right foods and digesting it properly, you can't make the neurotransmitters that you need to fuel your brain either, and then you can't make those connections, and then it causes you to also have different choices of what you're choosing to crave to eat. Like, you know, the cravings, the digestion, it's all one thing. And that's why I really feel like if you really want to have proper health and quality of life, like starting with that, what you're surrounding yourself with, the people, the mindset, and what you put inside your body, like both mind and gut, that's in lowering stress. If you, that's like the only way to go. Like you can't do one, you have to do all three. You know, and realize, like you said, the relationship between the three. And that's why I really wanted to talk to you, because I think that what you do and help people understand and how to master that is just like the most important thing to actually learning how to heal and forgive and realize and stop placing blame on other things. You know, it's like what you can control within yourself, and that includes your internal and external environment, is the first place you have to start, you know?
Absolutely. And I think the thing that has helped me so much on my own journey, both with food, because I have a history of binge eating, as well as in every other facet of my life, is understanding that quite literally at a cellular level, when I can remain aware of my thoughts, my emotions at any moment in time, it's so empowering. I know that I have choices, right? Like I am not the victim of all of these patterns and programming that have like formulated me into the person that I am today. But when I can stay present from moment to moment, I know that I can choose. And that's all it takes, right? Is like choosing right now. What path do I want to be going down? What pattern do I want to be perpetuating, or what new pattern do I want to be creating? And right now, and right now, and right now, it's this very like intentional choice from moment to moment of like, what path do I want to be going down, and does it actually serve me? No? Okay, let's go down a different path. Let's choose something else. Let's choose something different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. So I also am an emotional eating and addiction coach, and it was really important to add that to my toolbox, because most people that are having issues, you know, or with, I don't want to say issues, but concerns with autoimmunity or disease or just food, it's because of that underlying emotional state of why you're choosing to eat what you eat, and then not realizing and learning how to understand that once you make certain choices, then your microbiome's in charge. Like then all of a sudden you think you're craving things, and sometimes emotionally you are craving it to fill a void, and sometimes it's your microbiome craving it and you don't even know that that's happening. And so it just, again, it perpetuates the cycle. But you have to start making, like you said, like understanding how to make the choice. You know, your microbiome's not going to make that choice for you. You have to be in control and learning how to do that from a non-stressed place. So that's great.
Absolutely. And I think the thing that I really want to highlight in what you just said is like understanding that we are in control, because I really do think that we are always in control, right? Like we always have the ability to make decisions within any state of stress or despair or intense waves of emotions. Like we always have choices. And I think that that's so empowering, because then it's not this like battle between like, oh, but I really have this strong craving, even though I know that I like shouldn't give into it. It's recognizing like I am already the one who gets to choose how I want to move forward. Like I am the one who has chosen every single thing that has gotten me to this point in my life so far. And so I can be the one that chooses differently in this moment.
Yeah. And then that's where what you teach people is to help them kind of put their mindset right and do breathe. Like I love your breathing exercises, but put you in that state where you feel like you can actually make a change, you know, because I think sometimes we feel, even though we are in control, we feel out of control. And so we have to have, you know, a method to realize how to put ourselves back into that, you know what, I am in control, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's where the breath work and meditation becomes so important, because it's all helping us really intentionally shift our nervous system state and gain the tools to know like, okay, I'm here right now and I want to be here. So like in the case of somebody who is, I want to tread lightly with my words, but like in more of a depressed state and overeating, right? Like that might require, based on the person in the situation, like a greater activation of sympathetic nervous system state, like just enough that we can feel empowered in our choices. Or if someone is like running to the fridge from like a state of like high stress and high anxiety, understanding how to like wind that ship down and like shift more into a parasympathetic state. And where that all really starts is with awareness of self. and awareness of our thoughts. And meditation is obviously like such an incredible tool to do this. Breath work is such an incredible tool to do this. But something as simple as, I mean, like I said before, everything that we expose ourselves to is going to change the way that our brain is working. So if you have been living your entire life with absolutely no self-awareness whatsoever, even just listening to us have this conversation right now will start to kind of connect and fire these new networks of neurons that perhaps have never been connected before to start to cultivate self-awareness. So listening to conversations like this, and then maybe even like listening to podcasts about self-awareness, or reading books about it, or maybe even starting your own meditation practice, like all of these little choices that we make to expose ourselves both externally and internally to greater self-awareness aids in our ability to cultivate self-awareness in the moments when it is like actually important, meaning the moments where we do feel overwhelmed or anxious or depressed.
Mm-hmm. That's so great. Do you have, and I know that what you do is very involved, but for anybody on this subject, is there like a breath work or a meditation that's like little mini thing that you could maybe share to help them that they could do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just like get super into it. So Jamie, you can close your eyes, and if you're listening live with us or catching the replay, you can close your eyes too. And you'll just take one hand to your belly and one hand to your chest. And this technique is super simple, so you don't have to have any prior experience with any type of breath work or meditation in order to do it. But you'll close your eyes, and rather than like squeezing the eyes shut, you'll just kind of let the weight of the eyelids hang heavy over the eyes. Mm-hmm. And you'll become aware of your breath. So you pay attention to the way your breath moves into and out of your body. So you pay attention to the way your breath moves into and out of your nose. And then you'll notice the way that ripples through the rest of your body. And you might feel other parts of your body moving as a reaction to this breath. So you might feel your chest rising or falling underneath one of your hands, and the belly expanding and contracting under the other. You might notice other parts of your body, like your rib cage or your pelvic floor or your lower back, moving in reaction to your breath. And so know that your breath is always giving you information. Your breath is a microcosm, or I guess perhaps a macrocosm, an example of what is happening within the container of your nervous system. So normally, a normal breathing pattern, a ratio of inhale to exhale is 1 to 2. So the exhale under normal balanced nervous system circumstances, the exhale will be twice as long as the inhale. Mm. And the breath will be balanced between the belly and the rib cage and chest, moving in and moving out. But when we lose mobility or lose movement in one area of the body, or we feel the breath concentrated more in one particular part and not the others, it's typically an indicator that something is imbalanced in the nervous system. So for example, if the inhale is longer than the exhale, that's typically an indicator that we're in a little bit of a sympathetic nervous system state. And when the breath is concentrated more in the area of the chest and it's not moving down into the rib cage or the belly, it's typically an indicator that we're feeling a little more anxious, or perhaps a little flighty or ungrounded. Whereas when the breath is focused more in the belly, it's typically an indicator that we're perhaps a little more lethargic or tired, fatigued. And so I invite you to take an even breath in, a breath that expands your belly out like a balloon as you inhale, that expands your rib cage out in 360 degrees, that fills all the way up to the top of your chest, so your chest rises ever so slightly. And then you exhale to relax your chest, to release the breath from the area surrounding the rib cage, and to let the belly sink back in towards the spine. And after you finish that breath, you can drop your chin down to your chest and blink your eyes open. And then when you're feeling complete, you can look up to your screen. So that's just a very simple way to become aware of like what's going on in the breath. Oftentimes when we can't quite name what's happening within the nervous system or even articulate what we're feeling, a good place to look is within the breath, because the breath never lies to us. It's always giving us information. And because communication between mind and body works in two ways, not just one, when we start to regulate or manipulate the flow of the breath, we can in turn regulate the flow of the mind. So by balancing the breath, by taking an even breath in and an even breath out, a breath that fills those three distinct areas of the body and then releases in the opposite way, we gain the opportunity to put a little more balance into the nervous system. So that's just the most basic little tool that I would love to leave everyone with today.
Thank you. I love that you helped with the description of what it is when you feel it in your belly and when you feel it in your rib cage. Like that was super helpful. So thank you.
Awesome.
What about the connection from for the vagus nerve? Do you have any vagus nerve exercises that and you don't have to take us through it, but you can talk about, is there anything that you like to help people with that connection?
Yeah, so vagus nerve in particular is really interesting. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do to trigger your vagus nerve. And if you're listening and you're like, what the heck is my vagus nerve? That is a nerve that runs from your brain all the way down through your abdomen, and it connects to almost every organ in your abdomen. It's primarily composed of parasympathetic nervous system fibers, or those relaxation response fibers. But there are just like a few sympathetic nervous system fibers in it as well. But there are a few ways that you can trigger it, one of which is resting your tongue on the roof of your mouth, on your soft palate. That triggers the vagus nerve to stimulate to the rest of the body and the brain that we're in a more relaxed state. Singing, I think because of the way that the air passes over the roof of the mouth, that stimulates vagus nerve. Splashing cold water on your face. I know that those are not meditation practices, but I just wanted to share them. Really? Splashing cold water on your face, that will trigger vagus nerve activity. And then, so the exact same exercise that we just did, but focusing on coaxing the exhale even longer than the inhale, so drawing out the exhale even more, will also help trigger the vagus nerve. You can also trigger the vagus nerve just by very gently twisting your spine. I'm not talking an extreme twist that you would do in a yoga class, but just a very subtle twist to the right and to the left, as well as any sort of folding forward motion where you're rounding the spine. And we do that in some of the breath work practices that I teach that Jamie's participated in before.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. I talk a lot with my clients about stimulating the vagus nerve, and those are a lot nicer exercises than I've given them.
What exercise are you giving them? I'm so curious.
So yeah, singing, a cold shower, and gargling, and extreme gargling. There, in some cases, which is not my favorite thing to recommend, but in some cases it's necessary, but a coffee enema, and they're no. Can I do, or tongue, kind of gagging a little bit, the tongue presses. So I think more of the breath work is what I would in the direction I'd like to go. Because when I say, I mean, I don't really want to tell anybody to do a coffee enema, but sometimes they're necessary.
And helpful.
Cool. Well, I don't want to take too much time, but I do want to read one more of your messages and then have you give us like your extreme takeaway that you would like us to turn into a goddess prompt, journal prompt for everyone. So,
Oh, okay, awesome.
okay. So I really liked that you said, ask yourself the question, what mental and emotional patterns am I perpetuating through my thoughts, feelings, and actions? And if you aren't happy with the current mental programming that you've got in place, what do you need to do to change it? And I thought that was really powerful messages. So if there's anything else you'd like to expand on with those two.
Yeah, so I think that the first one, understanding where your thoughts, energy, and emotion is at this moment in time. One of my favorite journaling exercises is just to do what I call a brain dump, where you literally just like write out almost like list or bullet points on a piece of paper. Like what are the thoughts, like word for word, what are the thoughts that stream across your mind over the course of the day? And really particularly, what are the thoughts that reoccur the most? Is it like, oh God, I have to look at my to-do list again? Or I wonder if they've emailed me yet? Or, oh my God, I have this work meeting that's coming up on Friday that I am going to do terribly in. Or I don't know, maybe you've been doing this inner work for a while and it's more along the lines of like, I'm so grateful that I get to be here living another day. But just to really take stock of like, what is running through the container of my head right now? And over the course of my day, what are word for word the thoughts or the inner dialogue, or I guess inner monologue, that I am consistently like replaying over and over and over again? So to at first like take stock of like, okay, this is where I am right now. And then to look at from there, where do I want to be? Like what kind of inner monologue do I want to be perpetuating? Is it a monologue of perhaps greater self-appreciation or gratitude or love or forgiveness? I think you had mentioned forgiveness before, Jamie, and I think that that's huge for everyone. Or resilience, whatever it might be. And really writing out like, what would that new inner monologue even sound like? Like word for word, what would those thoughts sound like? And just in taking the time to write those things down and even speculate or entertain the possibility of what that might be like, we give ourselves the opportunity to kind of like awaken once again these new neural pathways, these new neural networks. And the more we can reflect on this, the more we become aware of those more negative thought patterns as they occur over the course of the day, and the more easily accessible the more positive ones are. So I would just love to like add that to what you shared.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, and like the how, like what would that even sound like? And who do I need to be to do that? So great. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then what do you want your goddess journal prompt to be specifically?
Like word
No
for
pressure.
word, if I was like, this is your prompt, I think it would be to summarize what I just shared, just to literally answer the question, what are my overarching thought patterns right now? What is my current inner monologue? What thoughts do I return to the most? And then from there to pivot and say, what do I want them to be?
Okay. I love that. Awesome. I can't wait. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing the breathwork exercise with us and just going on and talking and explaining, even though I was using like words like vagus nerve and you're like, okay, hold up. Let me tell everybody what the heck she's talking about.
I love nerding out on this stuff. And I also know that like sometimes when I'm teaching, not so much now on Zoom because I can't like see everyone's faces that well, but sometimes when I'm like in real life with everyone and I start talking about these super like nitty gritty nervous system details, people are like,
they're like, what?
So I always like to like break it down and explain like, okay, this is what we're talking about now, just in case you don't know.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And you have some exciting things coming up too, right? Like in April, do you want to share?
Yeah. So I am facilitating a yoga nidra teacher training all online that starts April 9th. If you're unfamiliar with yoga nidra, it's not yoga like a workout yoga class. Yoga nidra is actually the name of a highly specialized kind of meditation practice. It's done lying down on your back, and it's very, very similar to hypnotherapy. So in a yoga nidra practice, you're essentially teaching your body how to fall asleep while your mind remains alert and focused. And that enables the brain to shift into alpha and theta brainwave prominences, or it's also known as like the hypnagogic state. It's the same kind of brainwave prominence that you'll shift into when you're dreaming at night. And so because of that, you have greater access to the subconscious and unconscious mind, which makes it a super, super powerful practice just for deep subconscious reprogramming, like pulling out old belief systems from the root and planting a new seed of intention or a new belief system in even more fertile ground. So that starts on April 9th. It's all online. If you're interested in looking for more information about that, you can head over to the link in my bio on my Instagram account. That's at Alex_Nashton. And then if you're just looking for some resources and tools to help you with stress, or even more specifically with anxiety, I have a free 5-day meditation challenge called 5 Days to Overcome Anxiety. And again, you can find the link to that in my Instagram bio. I think Jamie shared it on her page as well. And that's totally free. It's not live anymore, but you can catch the replays and like move through them at your own pace, the 5 days of that experience.
Yes, that's so awesome. And I think I'm going to check out your Nidra teacher training.
Yeah, do it.
I'm excited.
It's such a good practice for anybody who is struggling to like overcome a thought pattern, and they're like, God, I just feel like I'm throwing everything at the wall and nothing seems to stick. In my experience, when we cannot, or we're having a really hard time consciously rewiring some of these patterns, diving into the unconscious mind or the subconscious mind is often very helpful and yields faster results, or results where we haven't been able to quite access them before. Yeah. So yeah, I hope you'll join us, Jamie. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I'm really interested in that. When I was younger, I had night terrors, and so I had to see, different types of sleep doctors and really understand how to kind of take control of my dream. Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting now, because now I can tell when I'm stressed. I'll have a dream that I had when I was like, I would have like 5 different dreams that I would always have as a child. And so now if I'm stressed, I'll have this like dream from the past, but I don't remember like what to do now because it's been so long. But that was part of the training, is you have to memorize what to do, and then you do it so you can wake yourself up. So now it's even more stressful because I'm like, I don't remember what to do. Oh my gosh. So anyway, I just feel like there's a lot that you need to break open in that and try to, not that I get like that stressed that often anymore, because I feel like I'm able to, understand and prepare for that. But when it happens, I think it would be kind of neat to do something like this, just to understand my subconscious a little bit deeper and go into that, and maybe understand a little more of what's going on, so I don't have that terror,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so interesting. It's like the subconscious and unconscious mind, they're kind of like this Pandora's box. Like there's so much in there. And once you open them, the way that I like to explain it is kind of like, it's like when you take a hiatus from exercising and working out, and then you start again, you're not just burning more calories when you're exercising, but you're also burning more calories like when you're sitting on the couch later that night. It's the same thing with the subconscious mind. It's like once you open that Pandora's box and just start to like excavate and pull out the old shit that doesn't serve you anymore, you gain the greater ability to do that when you're sleeping at night, when you're dreaming at night, even just when you're like walking around, going about your day, because you've already like put these processes in place through a practice such as yoga nidra. You gain the greater ability to just be like processing in the times when you aren't actively in the practice. So it's a huge tool for like healing anything that's like kind of stuck within the deeper layers of the psyche.
I love that. Do you think that would help people, that maybe store past traumas like emotionally, but in their physical body? Do you think that would help kind of go deep and release that as well? Is that something you've ever experienced?
I absolutely think that it can, and not to get like a little too woo-woo out here, but I've heard of many people, and I've talked to many people in the practices that I've led, who have memories of past life experiences or things that they didn't even know that they were repressing from way back in the day. I think that the only like word of caution that I have for someone who knows that they've experienced trauma going into a yoga nidra practice, and any well-trained guide will articulate this really before the practice begins, but because you're lying down on your back with the goal of remaining still, if someone has a trauma pattern that's associated with freeze, it might not be a beneficial practice for them in that way, but they can still participate in the meditation sitting up and with their eyes open. It's just, I want to like give a word of caution, like if that is an experience that someone's had, like eyes closed, lying down, like told not to move. I just want to say, like, you can practice this practice sitting up, eyes open, in any position you'd like to. Ideally, we'll be lying down on our backs with the eyes closed and as still as possible, but that's not like a requisite. And I think that it yields a tremendous benefit to like healing past trauma. Okay. Absolutely. And I can see that Kimberly by Teddy just joined. Kimberly is like the #1 yoga nidra fan. nobody loves yoga nidra more than Kimberly by Teddy. So she picked the perfect time to pop in on this live.
That's so awesome. I'm really excited to learn more. I think that I definitely would love to do that, and I think that it's something that I would love to refer some of my clients to you as well, because I think that it's a lot of times when you have gut and like major serious gut and digestion issues. I mean, I'd say 100% of my clients, there is past trauma, and and it's something that's really obviously the gut brain connection, and it's something that would be great in to refer out into a specialist to help them with that process of healing truly, So.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was super fun to talk to you, and hopefully I'll be seeing you soon.
I hope so, Jamie. This has been so fun. I love nerding out on all of this stuff. So thank you so much for having me on here. It's been such a joy to talk to you.
Thank you. You too. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. Bye.